Welcome to another episode of the School Podcast. Today we have a very special guest. But before we get into this podcast, I need to thank our sponsors, of course, Gadget Line for making this all happen. Plus, they create world-class videos for schools, and also Edurio. And funny enough, we have the managing director of Edurio on today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Iona, talk to me. How has life been for you over the last 4 or 5 years working in education, working for Edurio? How's things been for you?
I started in Edurio about 4 years ago, and that was my first time working in education. My background is in market research, so I've always been interested in what people think and how people act and sort of their behaviours, their attitudes, all of that stuff. Came into Edurio, as I say, 4 years ago, moving from a situation where I was working with kind of big brands, thinking how can we sell more of this crisp brand, how can we sell more of this cleaning product and all of that stuff, and then moved over to education and sort of found actually that those skills that I developed and that sort of ability to understand people at scale translates into education in a way that also makes me feel a little bit more like I'm fighting the good fight than perhaps I sometimes did. So it's been a really nice kind of transition into the sector. I think finding my kind of feet and understanding what is it about education that I'm kind of really passionate about and where I can have the highest level of impact. And I know that there are everybody in education that's kind of spent their kind of their life's work on it. The passion there is there and all of that. There are certain things where that my kind of outside of perspective I think is quite valuable. Other areas where I think I'll be in a conversation with people talking about the details of a particular behaviour policy or something, and I'm like that's not the place where I'm going to be kind of more informed or more useful than the people that are already talking. So that's about learning, that's about listening. In the places where I can be kind of bring my unique perspective and bring that kind of strength is things like understanding people at scale. How can we listen to our people? How can we use that as a kind of driver of leadership? And marrying up kind of that sort of sense of community and that sort of ability to listen to your people and make them feel heard, but then also use that as a device and as a tool to actually run your organisation better. So that's been where I've kind of really found myself enjoying myself over the last few years.
So in short, what does Edurio do?
We in its kind of basic form, we create surveys for schools. So we have a software platform that enables school and trust leaders to listen to their pupils, their parents and their staff. So that ranges from really kind of big strategic topics, looking at kind of understanding the big challenges and the big priorities for the sector, down to really day-to-day things. You want to make a quick decision, you need a sort of a pulse or a kind of temperature check across this particular area. Let's run a quick poll, a quick survey to understand what the kind of needs of the people are. And my favourite example of that is one of the schools that we work with ran a survey of just a handful of questions. Understanding about the school bell. So is it too loud? Can you hear it everywhere? Wow. What are we kind of, is it fine as it is? Should we turn it up? Should we turn it down? Seems really kind of basic and simple, but then actually really important. If you think people are turning up late for your classes, you're getting frustrated, actually it's because they were in a part of the school where they couldn't hear the bell. Suddenly you've solved the problem without kind of needing to put in too much work. You've just said, let's ask them 5 questions, get as many voices as possible to answer it, and then we can move forward with kind of clarity. And as I say, the other end of the spectrum is these kind of big, this is our kind of bread and butter, these big strategic surveys, understand across the entire experience where are pupils or parents or staff feeling most positive or having the most positive experience or the least positive experience. The ambition there being that once you've listened to your people, you can then make sure you're directing resource in the right direction. You're not, maybe you thought you had to prioritise this thing and you're about to create a large project team or whatever, pour lots of resource into this area. You find out that actually everything's kind of all right in that area, and there's this new thing that you didn't know you needed to worry about that now you can kind of take that off your priority list and redirect resource where it's going to have the highest level of impact.
So why is listening really, really important, especially within education, whether it's across a trust, whether it's across just a school about the bell? Why is listening essential for, I guess, improvement, growth, impact? Yeah, why is it important?
Are you familiar? There's a proverb. I think it's a sort of old African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think
Instagram quote that is.
Isn't it just? You can almost see it sort of pictured on the back of a place you might go for a brunch or something. That's but it is, there's sense in that. If I could decide, make a quick decision, what am I going to have for lunch today? Probably not useful for me to consult with others around me. What do they think I should have for lunch? I can just make that decision. I can go and do that myself. If it was a slightly bigger decision that maybe has a high level of impact, particularly getting the voices of the people who it's going to impact involved in that decision, means that you can go further. You're going further together. Make sure that they're kind of bought into the decision, or make sure that they've had a say. So I think the phrase kind of done with rather than done to, that's something that I've heard a lot since. I'd never heard that expression before I entered the world of education, but I think it's something that we do hear a lot, and making sure that it's something that is going to work for your people. So you've understood their needs, you've understood their challenges. It's going to work for your people, and then when you actually start implementing it, you're reducing that level of friction of kind of the done to model. Why is this suddenly? Why are we changing this thing? What's going on? It was okay before, or I don't understand the rationale behind that. I think making people not just feel part of the discussion, but actually genuinely be part of the discussion.
I think that, for sure. Interesting. Well, quite a deep question, I guess. Well, I think so. What do you feel like schools do a good job of listening as a whole? Well, I have data on it. You'll see me do this probably throughout our conversation.
Love data. Bring it up. You'll ask me a question that I can choose either to give my opinion, or if I can defer to
maybe a bit of both, because I guess sometimes you see the impact of even the surveys, the listening, the solutions. You see the impact of even what you guys do on a daily basis, and it is focused on improvement, it is focused on growth. So I guess sometimes you're there getting frustrated, you're like, whoa. So talk to me.
I'll tell you the data point. Among our customer base, we have around 80,000 staff members respond to our core strategic survey each year. We have over 100,000 pupils and around, I think, 60,000 parents. There's a question in each of those surveys about their voice and how much they see that their feedback has impact. Staff, I think around 1 in 5 say that they feel that their feedback doesn't really have any impact.
1 in 5?
Yeah,
okay.
2 in 5 when we look at parents, and pupils somewhere between about kind of 33-35% feel that students don't have a voice.
Okay. Is that terrible?
Is that terrible?
Yeah.
It's the flip side is that 4 in 5 staff feel that at least sometimes their feedback has an impact, and you don't want to be actioning everything. It's sort of, if you try to do everything that everybody wants, you'd sort of create chaos. But it's not terrible, but it's also there's room for improvement, particularly I think with parents. But I think both pupils and staff there is significant room for improvement.
Yeah, and I guess the challenge is though, people who join Edurio,
They've already run a survey.
or they're already people who have a growth mindset.
Exactly.
They want to improve, they want to grow. So
Yeah.
those numbers are great for the ones who are already using the platform,
Yeah.
but it's the potentially the schools and the organizations who are not using it.
Exactly. Yeah, this is within the context of people that have chosen to work with an external provider to gather feedback. Still within that, this proportion feel that their feedback doesn't have an impact, and I think, and that's an average. So we've got somewhere this number is going to be really, really high, somewhere this number is going to be really, really low. But we also we see not just the data, as you said. Now can share kind of my impressions. We go from the data and we spend a lot of time talking to our the people that work with us and understand kind of what their approaches are, understand what that's like on the kind of on the day to day. The data point gives you that sort of direction, but then it's that kind of let's put meat on the bones, let's understand the kind of stories and examples. And some organisations are doing this fantastically. I had a chat with, I'm going to name drop trusts throughout this conversation. I had a chat with a lady from Windsor Academy Trust a couple of weeks ago, and she told me about the way they've kind of made sure that pupils are involved in leadership at all levels. So there's pupils who are kind of, they have a rotating responsibility, and they're given kind of, they all have like a high-vis jacket of different colour to represent their responsibility for that moment. This is in a primary, she's director of primary. Making sure that they have their kind of, their sort of sense of responsibility, but also their opportunity and their kind of responsibility to feed into decisions. They make sure in the hiring process that they're sitting down, they're giving an opportunity to interact with pupils, including kind of in the corridor, sort of not quite orchestrated, but you sit there a moment, I'm just going to go and do something, make sure that there is an opportunity that sort of organically pupils are able to interact with them, and then seeking the views of pupils to make sure that actually they can see that this person can do right by them, as well as kind of teaching the curriculum well and having the kind of strong pedagogy and so on. So I think the answer to your question, how good is the sector at listening, absolutely depends. We've got clear evidence that there is room for improvement. But we've also got heaps and heaps of stories of people that are doing this really, really well.
But then I guess there's also those conversations you may have with potential schools who have not joined Edurio. And I bet there's some schools you probably think they're probably not the right client for us based on their listening or what they're trying to get out of it. Because I imagine some schools are just trying to do a tick box, other schools are actually trying to get better. Is that something that you see on a regular basis? Yeah,
we haven't really progressed this that far. It's kind of an idea in a bit of its infancy, which I suppose can test this out now, but is about that sort of like how far you are on your listening journey. Are you kind of, do you believe that listening is important? And like you said about the tick box exercise, is this something that your boss has said now we care about, or they've seen this thing, or they've heard someone else talk about it, go and now this is your job, but you personally aren't bought into that topic. Is it a genuine thing of like, this doesn't need to be a big deal, let's run something quickly, find out how people feel about the school bell. We don't need sort of months and months of planning. This is not a strategic decision, this is a tactical bit of feedback to help us kind of move along the way. And then you've got people that are like, feedback and listening is the core of their kind of strategic direction, and they wouldn't build their strategy without us or without an equivalent kind of listening exercise, making sure that they are not only setting their strategy, taking into account the views of their people, but they're also consistently referring back and checking in and seeing, okay, this is what we set out to do. We learned this. We found this as our baseline. These are then the actions that we've kind of agreed as our priority. We're coming back now. 1 year later, or perhaps only a few months later, depending on what the actions are and the kind of lead time, coming back, seeing how we're doing. And we can see that in our data. The people that work with us year after year, you can see you can see kind of how their initiatives are working.
So what does listening look like in practice in schools and in trusts?
So I've spoken most about surveying, and I think that's kind of one part of it, but I think it goes through all different levels. So I would say if you want to, there's kind of two different ends of the spectrum. You can find out sort of really in-depth stuff about a small set of things, or you can find, or from a small group of people, or you can find really broad stuff from a large group of people. So I think you would want to kind of marry both of those two up and make sure that you're doing a mixture of those things. But listening, I think, it's inviting people to give their opinion. Is the sort of active side of it. You're saying, okay, these are things that we want to know about. We've already picked the topics we want to learn about. Come and tell us about. Come and answer this question about this topic and this question about that topic. You've put yourself in the driving seat of that. You've said, these are the things that I care about, or these are the things that I'm going to be paying attention to. And that's in that sort of big get lots of information from. Broader information from a large number of people. That's the sort of thing you want to do when you want to test what you already know. So I think this is a priority. Let's check. I think that we might have an issue with wellbeing. Let's check. Kind of go and testing. Find out whether or not you already know what you think you already know. Then there's the other end of the spectrum, which is that kind of much less structured listening, anything from having a kind of loose conversation in a one-to-one setting to walking in the corridor and seeing, kind of sort of feeling the air. Is something up today? And then sort of just keeping your eyes and ears open and sort of understanding what are the things that you don't know. So where I said here, this is about testing what you know or you think you know. This is about finding out things that you don't know, or kind of getting into much more detail about those things.
So why should schools run surveys? Why should schools listen more? Why should this be a regular, consistent thing? Whether it's with Edurio or whether it's just something in-house, whatever they decide to do, why should schools need to focus on listening a bit more?
Yeah, I think so. One of the things that we talk about is kind of leading through listening, and it is our sort of focal point. We think it is a really strong tool at your disposal as a leader. As a leader, you've got the network. In order to be a leader, you have to have something to lead. Normally, that would be people. You've got that network, so it's one of the tools that you have at your disposal. But I think the reasons why it's so important is there's both the sort of moral purpose of sort of you want to build a place where people thrive. You want to build a place where people feel that they belong, and it's not hard to. I don't think I need to sort of spend too much time convincing anybody that you feel you belong if you feel you've been listened to. I think that's something that most people could relate to. But I also think there is a really strong strategic advantage of doing so. So it goes back to the if you want to go far, go together thing. But if you want to kind of make change, there's lots of stuff around kind of change management theory that is a significant part of that is about bringing your people on the journey with you, reducing friction and so on, and that's kind of the once people feel they've been part of the discussion, they'll likely be happier with the decision, even if the decision doesn't go their way, if they can understand why. And we do a lot of work with people to say kind of the number one thing you do at the end of a survey is thank people for their time, and then as quickly as possible try and share what you learned. You might not be able to give them too many answers at this point. It might be we've discovered that this is the area that people are kind of struggling with the most. We need to go and investigate that further. We'll provide an update when we can, but this, as quick as you can, sort of saying, we've heard. So you're not just listening and then coming back again next time and getting more information, and sort of it feels like has to be a feedback loop rather than one end of the spectrum of making all your decisions completely alone, the other end of the spectrum asking people for, or it's not really a spectrum, I suppose they're just different challenges, making all your decisions completely alone, done to rather than done with, or asking people for their thoughts all of the time, but then them never understanding what it was like, don't know why they've been asked, they don't know what it's impacting, they don't see any impact. Why am I going to bother? You've asked me 10 questions over the last couple of months, don't know why you've asked me it, haven't seen the impact, why am I now going to answer your next set of questions, sort of thing.
And then what happens from there? So you've got like a survey, then does it provide the data? And then do you pass it on to the school? Do you talk to them about it? Like how does that process work?
Yeah, so our platform basically, those who work with us and run Edurio survey, so our platform allows we have a bunch of templates, over 50 templates on things like that big strategic piece to kind of deep dives into particular topics like attendance or behaviour, parental engagement and so on. So anyone who runs an Edurio templated survey, they are both feeding into our national benchmarks, and then they will get the national benchmark back as a kind of as part of their
is that useful?
Results. And it is. So I think one thing when we look at our staff survey, it goes across a whole range of topics, from what it's like to be an employee, what's the employer like, how do you get on with your line manager, how do you get on with your leadership, what it's like in the classroom, do you have the right resources, how long do you spend on various tasks and so on. It's very, very broad. Consistently, workload comes out at the bottom as the sort of area that people are, it's the least positive part of the experience. There's a couple of others that are in the mix as well, but workload is consistently at the bottom. And again, these are averages, so there are some who are really good. We've released a report or a kind of good practice guide where we found the best people at workload in our data set, and we sat down with them and we listened to them, and they told us kind of what they're doing, so we can pass that back to others to learn from. But I think
that's really cool.
Yeah, I think that benchmarking piece is really important, because if I ran that survey without looking at the benchmark, I might think, okay, workload is bad. We need to drop everything else. Let's crack workload. This is our biggest problem. It is, but it's also everybody else's biggest problem. So this is a systemic issue. This isn't you and your school have done workload badly. This is workload is a big challenge in the education sector. If the next thing up is communication, and you're seeing, okay, we're better at communication than we are at workload, but in comparison to everybody else, we're miles and miles behind. Yeah. Actually, you've got more agency with that. That's other people are doing this better than you. There's more evidence that we can do better with communication than we can with the others. So focusing on that, making sure that you are not obsessing over it, because there's so many different contexts. There's going to be, you need to apply your kind of school's context and your when you took the survey, maybe something happened in the weeks leading up to it. It's not a surprise that thing has sort of come out as particularly bad. But use that benchmark as a kind of guiding light. Is again possibly using the word listening too much as a blunt instrument here, but it is about listening to the sector, seeing kind of, rather than going from looking inwards and seeing kind of where we are as a organisation. Let's look up and look around. Is this an us problem, or is this a us in the sector?
Is there an element? I don't know if you want to touch too much on it. Obviously, you'd have your templates. Do many schools want to change the templates a little bit to sometimes control the answer?
Yeah. So not that often. What's more likely is they want to add some questions.
Okay.
So something that's not covered in the template, but they have a kind of specific thing that relates to that thing that they want to find out more about. absolutely not a problem, makes sense. The survey's designed to sort of
dig deeper, work for them.
And so they can do that. Occasionally they will want to change the question itself. Could be for a variety of reasons, and sometimes it is because they don't want to hear
because it's hard,
negative.
isn't it?
Yeah.
It is hard.
Yeah, particularly we have a question which is our kind of key question in the main staff survey. How often have you thought about resigning in the last 3 months?
Wow.
Which is that is the sort of thing that is not going to be, if you find out that this is a lot higher than you thought, it's not going to be pleasant to hear. And so our kind of challenge in those moments would be to try and convince you, would it not be better that you found this out now than if they're thinking about resigning, you've got an opportunity to
It's an important question.
Yeah. And then because our surveys allow you to see kind of demographic groups, we prioritise anonymity. So if you go too narrow, then the platform won't show you that data. But if you can see, you could look at kind of people's tenure. If there's people in their sort of 5th year of working there, is there something about a sort of natural turnover? If actually it's everybody that's wanting to leave is in their 1st year, what are you doing with your onboarding? Is there something we're getting wrong on kind of day 1 to day 365 that we want to be kind of focusing on?
And how many schools do you work with in the UK?
Latest figure I don't have off the top of my head, but it's over 2,000.
Wow.
So we work mostly with multi-academy trusts. We've got about 170 trusts that we work with, and it's sort of somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000.
And that's primary schools as well?
It's both, primary and secondary, predominantly academies. We do have some maintained, some independents, but it's predominantly academies, and within that, predominantly multi-academy trusts.
So the data that you must collect must be pretty interesting as well.
It's really cool, and like I said, my career started out of a sort of interest in what people think, being able to see it's the temperature of the sector in any given.
Yeah. Is there anything what shocked you coming into education and like a data point like where it's just been like, wow, that's quite unbelievable?
I don't know that it shocked me. It's certainly, I think it's really noteworthy. Our survey on equality, diversity and inclusion, which we launched in 2021, at the start of 2021, we looked at basically various things relating to equality, diversity and inclusion, including kind of career progression and recruitment, see if there was any kind of differences in the recruitment experience or the kind of progression routes for people with different protected characteristics. So we asked, I think there's about 16 questions at the end of the survey covering the protected characteristics that are outlined in the Equality Act. And we looked through and we could see things that weren't surprising. I've heard someone refer to it as shocking but not surprising, which I think is quite an interesting way of referring to it. The least marginalised groups were the most confident that everything was fine. So white males much more likely to think everyone's treated equally than women of colour. If anyone thinks they're not being treated equally, they're not being so it was more about the perception. But the one that really stood out is those in a leadership position and those not in a leadership position. So this is a staff survey. Those in a leadership position were so much more likely to feel that their workplace is committed to EDI than those not in a leadership position. It was still a high percentage, it was 70 odd for those not in a leadership position, but it was 90 something for leaders. And that I think is a really interesting one, and I've had lots of conversations with people since then around that, and sort of saying there might be an element of this which is like leaders in their ivory tower, they think everything's fine, they don't get what's going on, but it's also a communication piece. If I'm working across all the schools in my trust, and I know that over here we've got this amazing affinity group, and over here we've got this amazing grassroots thing, and over here we've got this person who's championing this thing, and there's this network, that one network, this policy, that policy. If I know all of that because I'm sitting centrally and I can see it, I will believe that we're committed because I've got all of this evidence. But if it's not being communicated, it's not being seen by everybody, it's not having the impact that it needs to.
Can you give us a few examples of how some schools do listening really, really well?
Yeah, so and this is,
and like how often do they do it? What does it look like? I'd be interested to know.
Yeah, so I think one thing we introduced last year, which was the first time, or this academic year, the first time we've done it, is a kind of Edurio awards scheme, which, as I said, I mentioned the workload guide a minute ago, but that was part of it. We take some of these kind of meaty issues, the things that we can see in our data are the big challenges, and we go and find who's the best at those things.
Yeah.
We give them an award and we say, congratulations, you're standout at this particular area. In exchange for that, tell us what you do, so we can share that wisdom with others, and they can take that kind of experience, apply it to their context, and see how it measures up, and then run with it. And there's a few kind of standouts. So I mentioned Windsor already. They, I think, are the trust that have won most of our awards, as in more awards than anybody else. They won Pupil Belonging. They won, I think, a workload one, leadership. There's the thriving trusts we've looked at as well, kind of who's got the best trust community, so not just at the school level but across the entire trust. They are doing a really, really good job at having their people part of the conversation. Yeah. So I think they kind of across the board. There's a couple of others that come to mind. Ted Rag, which is down in the southwest. They have.
Where's that?
Devon way.
Not too far away from here.
Yeah, not too far from here. They have, I think, in the teens, something like 17 schools. Quite a mixed bag. Could be a reasonably sized secondary, could be a primary with sort of 30 kids. Very rural, and then some a bit more kind of a bit more urban. They have put. They use Edurio, but they have put staff feedback at the core of their professional development. So they don't have like appraisals. They don't do kind of a sort of formal performance management. They do a different type of thing where they sort of talk, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's something like how can we be better employers is the kind of gist of the conversation. Their heads and their leadership, as part of their key performance indicators, they have questions that come from the Edurio survey that measure kind of how happy people are to be at the school, whether they'd recommend it and so on. They are using their, and then I think there's maybe sort of 5 or 6 overall KPIs, of which we're a couple of those. So for their main stuff, their main kind of, are we doing okay as an organisation, they're putting the voice of their staff at the core of that.
For the last 4 to 5 years, you've done a lot of listening to school leaders, head teachers, CEOs. You've reflected on data. If you had a magic wand and could change anything in education from what you've seen, what would that one thing be?
I think there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things where I go to conferences quite a lot, and I always try and get myself a slot early on in the day, because I find myself, I think my job is trying to find the problems. I've got these data sets. I can sort of say, this is where the problems are, and then I'll hand over to somebody else to go and sort of talk about the solutions. But I also think we see from talking to trust leaders, and we run alongside the Confederation of School Trusts the annual CEO sector survey, looking at the priorities and challenges for the year ahead. This year we've done it 3 years in a row. We've got the 4th one launching. I think we're running at that in June. So maybe that's already launched, not depending when this podcast goes out. We, for the first time in last year's survey, financial sustainability was the number 1 priority. Really? The last 2 years it had been quality of education, and those has flipped around last year because of the funding, because of the ongoing challenges when it comes to finances. I think that is clearly a kind of consistent and growing problem. We had the pandemic, then we had RAC, then we've had all these kind of challenges one after the other. Finances are getting tighter and tighter, but I think as well there is a big challenge in the kind of systems and kind of sharing and learning from one another. I think the trust sector is now, what is it, getting on for sort of 15 years old. It's been around a while now, but it's meant that there is a lot of organisations kind of forming as organisations for the first time. And the more I spend time with people, the more I see we're in a school today that's part of the Cabot Learning Federation. They're part of the Queen Street Group, which is a bigger an organisation of a handful of trusts that they learn from each other. More and more of that, and being able to kind of share that expertise and a lot of stuff when a sector is forming for the first time is doing stuff for the first time. If we've got however many trusts we've got in the country, everyone's doing something for the first time. The more we can kind of share that and have that sort of efficiency of understanding and sort of sharing that wisdom, I think the better.
And what's like your goal and focus now moving forward? Like your mission with Edurio, what is it you want to see happen? What can you do? What would you like to do to deliver more impact, I guess?
Yeah, I think the main thing is that we want to be kind of empowering focus and making sure that people...
Empowering focus. I like
Another
that.
thing you could put on the wall in a
like
front
that.
spot.
What does that mean?
Well, it's sort of... so making sure that people, as I say, there's so many things that need to happen now. There's so many challenges. There's so many kind of things happening every day, and that changes a lot from...
Once again, we are in a school. Back to empowering focus.
Yeah. It changes a lot from... it's funny that's distracted me and I've lost my focus.
I know.
Making sure there's so many things that you could be working on in any given moment. Some of those are going to have more impact than others. So the more we can do to understand the needs of our people, the more we can see which of those things can have the most impact, which of those things are worthy of our focus. And then if we can say, actually, we're gonna put all of our resource, or we're gonna put a disproportionate amount of resource into these areas, this is going to take us further than it would do if we were also worrying about these things over here.
Amazing. Personal question. If you could sit down with any one person, dead or alive, who would that one person be? And why?
So, funny, I thought I would come up with something.
You still not come up with something?
Well,
I've given you 24 hours as well.
It's funny, no, I have come up with something, but I've come up with it as you were saying it, and it surprised me. My dad died when I was 18,
Wow.
and it hadn't occurred to me that would be the answer. I was thinking I need to think of something cool, someone impressive from history or something. But just as you said it then, I thought it would be nice to see what my dad thinks of who I am now.
How old are you now?
33.
33.
Yeah.
So how was that then, I guess, because I don't want to dive into too much of it, but there's, I work with a lot of teenagers on a daily basis who lose parents. How was that for you, and how was that molded you to become who you are today?
It was odd because it happened really suddenly.
Okay.
So I've had friends who've lost loved ones, and in fact my grandma died very slowly. She was dying for about 12 years. She was getting more and more frail, and it was really tough watching it. Whereas with my dad, it was like he had a heart attack, game over. And so sort of went to bed one night with one life, woke up the next day with a different life.
Wow.
And that, it was sort of, I think in some ways it was easier to put it away, because it was like I didn't have to deal with it ongoing for such a long time. It was like, here was your life, here is now your life. But at the same time, I think it shapes a lot of stuff. I got married last year, and I did the father of the bride speech because I didn't have somebody to do that, which was nice. And I think I wouldn't have wanted not to do a speech, because I feel like, why do we let all the men? why would I let all the men do the talking when I like talking myself? It's sort of the moments like that where you think, actually, I wonder what life would have been like if we'd had the next 15 years together. But
And what would be one thing you'd ask him?
I honestly, it's self-centered, but I would want to know what he thinks of what I've done since, and if he's proud and thinks I'm doing all right.
Are you proud of yourself?
Yeah, I think so.
Getting there.
Yeah, it goes in waves.
Of course, but that's probably the same as everything, even, isn't it, with leadership and growth and doing what we're doing. Yeah. Sometimes we're going to be like, we've done amazing, and other times we're going to be hard on ourselves. But that's when the next step and progress happens, I think.
I think so. It happens. That bit comes just before, or it comes as part of, or maybe it's happened. You're growing as it's happening, but you don't notice it because you're focusing on the kind of stress and perhaps imposter syndrome. And
amazing. Anyway, I just want to say from obviously the bottom of my heart for the podcast, thank you for sponsoring the podcast. The work you are doing is unbelievable. It's so important, and that was a weird noise. Maybe that needs to go on.
We need to do a survey.
Yeah. But honestly, thank you so much. We'll leave all the links and everything in the bio, of course. Share the amazing work that you're doing. But yeah, thank you, and hopefully we can do this again in the future.
Thanks, it's been my pleasure.
Amazing. There you go, guys. Another episode of the School Podcast. I hope you all enjoyed it. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the good stuff. Check out Edurio as well. They're doing amazing work in education with huge impact. And yeah, I'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.
My name is Sian Lord, and I help deliver the Girls Growth Programme, a programme that helps deliver impact for teenage girls, ensuring that they're happier and healthier on their school journey, with a big focus on relationships, friendships, body image, self-esteem, mental health and mindset.
I'm Natalie. I'm one of the leaders for our Girls Growth Programme, where we discuss important issues such as self-esteem, diet, exercise and confidence. Think of 3 unhealthy habits that you have for yourself at this moment in time. And when you don't get enough sleep, it's harder to regulate your emotions, and small problems can seem much bigger than they are. Exercise isn't just about looking good or staying fit, it's vital for your mental health.
So get in touch today to get the support that your girls need now.